begin with a little meditation, as always. I'll guide us a bit in sitting. Of course, you all know how to sit quietly and just be together, but I'll give you some guidance at first, and then let's just enjoy the silence together, shall we? So begin by shifting awareness to the sensations of the body against the chair on which you're sitting, the surface. Just really letting yourself settle and connecting directly with your sensate experience. One of the beauties of sitting quietly is we get to experience our direct connection with the body, with the earth, with sensate experience. We're so caught up in our minds. There's something wonderful and refreshing about just being with what is at a sensate level. Let yourself enjoy the contact of your feet against the floor and your body against the chair. Sensations of the rising and falling of your chest and belly as you breathe. Nothing you have to think about right now or figure out. Nothing you have to do. Wonderful opportunity to just be. Just being aware of the field of sensation. The body is just really the play of sensations. All we can know of this so-called physical body is just sensation, which is itself awareness. Allowing awareness to expand, if it hasn't already, to sensations both inside and outside the body. Those are just arbitrary distinctions in any case. One continuum of awareness. Not resisting, not picking and choosing, just opening to your experience just the way it is. As you sit in this openness, allowing everything to be as it is, in fact, welcoming everything without resistance, a wholehearted embrace of life as it is, as it unfolds. You may find that the sense of being a separate someone welcoming falls away, and there's only the welcoming, only the openness. No separation. Okay, let's let our meditation come to an end and come back together, so to speak. Not that we've ever been apart. Bring our attention into the space, into interaction. So it's great to see you all today, this morning or evening, or whatever time it may happen to be. Some of you are new, and some of you very familiar faces. Small group. I didn't advertise this one very much. I sort of got preoccupied, so I think that's lovely. A more intimate group. So generally, how satsangs go is I do a little talking, and then we open it up for dialogue and discussion. It doesn't have to be about what I talk about, but whatever questions you might have about this general theme of awakening and embodying our awakening in everyday life. And so what I felt moved to talk about today, it's sort of based on a well-known Zen koan, the punchline of which is not knowing is the most intimate. And in fact, it's the koan that I presented as a Zen monk when I was the head monk at a monastery in the United States, actually, in my tenure as head monk, and seemed very apropos because I had been an intellectual and very proud of my knowing. So to talk about not knowing seemed really important for me, and it's been a kind of guiding, you could say, axiom my whole life. So the koan basically goes: a wandering monk comes to the master, as often happened in ancient China and also Japan. And the master says, "Well, where have you been?" And the monk says, "Oh, I've been wandering around on pilgrimage, going from master to master." And he said, "And what's the point of all your wandering?" And he said, the monk pauses for a moment and he says, "I don't know." And the master says, "Not knowing is the most intimate." So this feels relevant always, but especially these days. In so many ways, COVID has been a great teacher for us. I've written about that and I've been talking about that for a number of months now. And this is another way in which I think it's a very powerful teacher, because we really want to understand this whole situation. We really want to have answers. We want to, come to conclusions. We want to have it wrapped up, And what I find even among friends, people who have had some awakening, have some deep spiritual understanding, is kind of taking refuge in questionable theories about what's really going on, where the virus comes from, who started it, how do we heal it, how How virulent is it? How infectious? All the questions that everyone's been raising. And there's some pretty diverse points of view about this, right? And I think we've all been trying to understand it, both to keep ourselves and our loved ones as safe as possible, but also the mind wants to figure things out, right? It wants to have some answer. It gives us a feeling of security to pretend to know, right? But what I think the virus has been showing us, as life itself so often shows us, is that our attempts to know are ultimately very limited in scope. And that, in so many ways, we can't really fully know. In the case of the virus, there are many conflicting and equally plausible explanations at so many levels. I can say, as someone who's tried to very hard to understand it, I can say that there are many different, very believable points of view. So I think what's helpful is to use it as an opportunity to become aware of our need to know, right? Our need to have it figured out, how the mind wants to grasp onto something that gives it security. This is what it's about. It's a conspiracy, created by so and so and so and so, or these forces, or the World Health Service doesn't know what it's talking about. These doctors over here, so we're trying to come to some kind of, which is of course understandable, but I think to stay open to the possibility that the mind is limited in what it can understand, and to also notice the ways the mind seeks security in knowing, rather than allowing ourselves to drop into that deeper level of not knowing, of being intimate with what is right now, just the way it is, and trusting some deeper knowing beyond the mind to guide us through with whatever information we can muster, but not feeling we need to have it all worked out in order to feel secure. To have some, as I've been talking about now, in various satsangs, some deeper ground, right? To be able to abide in some deeper knowing, some deeper sense of who we really are, some deeper sense that there's a mystery, a mysterious order behind the way things are unfolding, that we can't fully understand. We can grok it, we can tune into it as much as we can, and again, we can get as much information as possible, and then do what we can given what we can possibly know. So it's an opportunity, really, to work with the mind that wants to have it figured out, and to become aware of its limitations, right? The limitations of what we can possibly really know. And so when the master is saying not knowing is the most intimate, one of my teachers, Suzuki Roshi, used to talk about beginner's mind. In fact, in his book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, he says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Right? So with beginner's mind, we're open, we remain open to possibilities, to what may emerge. Situations are fluid, they're constantly changing, they're constantly updating. And if we get wedded to a particular point of view, then we close our minds to the realm of possibilities, right? We become fixated. And so the key here is to remain open. Just as in meditation, I recommend sitting in openness to what is. When we get up from our meditation cushion, the benefit of openness extends into our life in every way. So to move into life with the same openness, the same not knowing. Okay. Open to what is, aware, awake, attuned, informing ourselves as much as we can know reliably, and then staying open to what unfolds. Huh? This is not knowing is the most intimate. By not pretending to know, by not imposing our agendas, our ideas, our theories on reality, and therefore closing down possibilities, we remain open to what emerges, open to the shifting, changing landscape of life. Huh? Otherwise, life becomes very limited, stale, dull. We lose the freshness, the vitality, the newness of each moment. Huh? And this is where the joy comes from, right? And the quality of awakeness. Huh? Awake to this right now, to this inexpressible moment. This moment right now is unique, it's fresh, it's new. Each moment is constantly arising in a new and unforeseen way, right? So to stay open to possibilities, to live in, as Jean Klein used to say, non-conclusion. Don't know mind. So again, the virus is a great opportunity, right? And of course, we wear our masks and we take our precautions as much as we feel inclined and take care of ourselves, needless to say, as much as we feel we need to, but not pretend we have it all, all worked out. Excuse me, I get a little something to drink here. So in that, there is also what I would say is humility. Huh? Knowing gives us a sense of power over reality, and our ability in the modern world to think we know so much about what's going on and to be able to figure things out has enabled us to have power over the material world in so many ways. But perhaps we've taken that to an extreme. Huh? The environmental crisis and COVID being one of the repercussions, it seems. So to recognize that perhaps we don't really know what we think we know. Humility in the face of the mystery, in the face of the complexity of life as it is. Huh? Any theory limits, it reduces, right? It reduces reality, which is infinitely rich, down to a schema, right? A map, rather than the territory itself. Huh? So how can we live with this openness? I think this is a great opportunity, a great invitation to do that, to remember that. Yeah. And as soon as, of course, we develop a point of view and we become attached to that point of view, wedded to that point of view, we start polarizing. Of course, as we've seen in our political landscape, we start polarizing, right? There are those of us with this point of view, and then there's everyone else with the other point of view. And what's wrong with them? And I see this, for example, with the, I guess I sort of peer into the world of Facebook and watch what people are doing. And, you know, and some of the people who are, in fact, my friends or associates, start becoming very animated in their defense of certain points of view and contentious and argumentative. And next thing you know, of course, those who would put forward a non-dual view of reality are caught in dualism, right? My view versus your view. Right? How tempting it is, how seductive, right? So to at least, if we have a point of view, and I recommend that we take any point of view lightly, because who we really are doesn't have a point of view. Who we really are is awareness itself, which sees things clearly without a point of view, just is open to what is, just the way it is, without interpretation, without a filter. So as soon as we get into a point of view, we separate, we divide, we polarize, and we limit. And we inevitably are not seeing reality as it is. We're inevitably filtering and narrowing down our experience of reality, right? So, you know, those of us who are attached to a point of view, well, you know, that's one way of being. But if we are really interested in living an awake life, a life that comes from our essential nature, that expresses our essential nature, then that's a life that is not attached to any point of view. The great way is not difficult for those who are not attached to their preferences, says the third patriarch of Zen. Huh? Great way is not difficult for those who are not attached to their preferences. But as soon as we get caught in right and wrong, in the divisions of the mind, the way is as distant, you know, as, I forget how he puts it, but, you know, as soon as we get caught in division, in right and wrong, good and bad, which is called the disease of the mind in the Sutra of the Third Patriarch, then we lose our way. See, then we're lost. We're lost in confusion. And the only way back is to come back to the openness of our essential nature, right? And at a certain point, once we've done that enough times, we get kind of tired of doing it, and then we perhaps learn to just stay home. Stay home in awake awareness, and not get caught once again in some limited point of view. And not only is this openness the source of clarity, it's also the source of love. As soon as we get caught in a point of view, there's us and them, the right ones and the wrong ones, right? And we're no longer embracing life just as it is. We're picking and choosing, dividing and parsing, creating conflict, essentially. So again, to live an awake life is to live a life of non-conclusion, an undivided life, which means to embrace everything just as it is, which is love, right? the love of the undivided for itself, which is what love really is. The deepest sense of love, the deepest love, is the love of our essential nature for its expressions in form. All of its expressions. Right? Not these as opposed to those, huh? Not this as opposed to that, me as opposed to you. So the openness not only of awareness, but the openness of the heart. Huh? As soon as we get caught in the point of view, we're caught in division. We've lost our way. So to find the deeper ground, we look to theories to give us a sense of security when we're faced with the unknown. Right? And this situation, this pandemic, has, if nothing else, been an unknown, an unprecedented situation that the mind has been unable to wrap itself around. Has tried very hard. There's some wonderful theories out there, but the mind just hasn't been able to come to terms with it, which I think is great. In that sense, it's been wonderful, humbling for all of us. But to just again stay open and not get caught in the theories that would give us a sense of security, seemingly, but to seek and find a deeper security, right, beyond the mind, a deeper ground. In other places I've talked about the groundless ground, right? Because in the material realm, there is no secure ground. Things are constantly changing. The rug is constantly being pulled out from under us. But what can we rely on? What is a ground that we can trust? And again, this is the deeper ground of our essential nature, consciousness, awake awareness, presence. So this situation is a wonderful opportunity to keep coming home to this deeper ground, beyond the mind. As soon as we find ourselves getting caught up with theories that seem to provide a kind of ephemeral sense of security, before they're ripped out of our hands, as they inevitably will be, we can let go of them and fall back into this deeper ground. That's the invitation. Okay, so let's open it up. Any questions? Any insights to share? Hand it over to you. I'm happy to have a dialogue. Yeah, Jason, please unmute yourself.
This kind of comes back to, I believe it was the first question I ever asked you in Tucson. Knowing that ground between when you're really looking at something is eating at you, and when you kind of are still just kind of wallowing in it a little bit, you don't really want to let it go. There's it's always been a gray area for me.
So explain that a little more. I'm not quite understanding.
When I know there's something, the term I use, when I know something's up my ass, when it's really hurts, I really spend a lot of time with it, looking at it, And a lot of it will eventually kind of dissipate.
You're talking about when you have like some idea, some fixed idea?
Yeah, something I was really attached to.
Right, okay.
But when it kind of works through, there's still something that doesn't want to let it go. It wants to stay there and wallow a little bit, you know.
Right, sure.
I did really good with the COVID thing, but this political play behind it all has really got me.
Right. Well, see, inevitably, when there's that kind of resistance or opposition, it's because we think things shouldn't be the way they are.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, you know, I think that's the first place to look. What do I believe? What are my beliefs about reality, right? Because I love Byron Katie's saying, you know, if you fight with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time, right? So as long as we're at war with reality, we're going to be miserable, right? Now, of course, we can do what we think is best under the circumstances, you know, as much as we can, as much as we have power. If we think the politics are corrupt, then we vote differently or we become involved in political action. But then the rest, if we don't give it over, if we don't surrender, we're going to be miserable, right? If we're constantly fighting with the way it is, right? So the first place to look is, what do I think about reality? How do I think things should be? And they're not, right?
I even stepped back to like, okay, what is this that wants to hang on?
You could ask that.
And it's actually...
But inevitably, it's a part of us.
Yeah.
It's a part that wants to be right, that wants to know. Yeah.
Big one. But I can actually get, you mentioned humility earlier, way out there where there's like not anything left that's trying to be humble. It's just real humility. And then something tells me not to just hang out there and hide. Is it wrong to come back and look at things you know are bothering you?
What do you mean?
I mean, I could stay out there in that deep humility.
Not knowing, you mean? The not knowing.
Yeah.
Well, is it out there somewhere? I mean, it's interesting the way you describe it.
Well, I didn't know how to.
Where is that?
Yeah, I didn't know how else to try describing being.
But I think your description of it suggests that you're doing something. You're putting yourself out there, you know, expanding yourself, detaching yourself in order to have some humility or some space. But that isn't fully integrated. See, it's not out there. It's right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's nowhere else but now and here.
Get that really deeper all the time, but there's maybe it's just identity that wants to come back into the fight.
Into the fight, you said?
Yeah, I mean.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever.
You know, sometimes I think we can spend a lot of time trying to figure out what part it is, but maybe that's just not necessary. There are always going to be parts of us that are going to resist the way it is, you know? Okay. And we can just let those be the way they are too, and come to rest in this deeper embrace, this deeper welcoming, huh? And allow those parts to, you know, be there too, but not give them necessarily give them energy. See?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do is limit.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Limit how much energy I give it. I give it a little bit of energy to let it start perking out, I mean, it's down there, but then once it starts perking, just sit on the cushion or whatever and let it perk out.
Let it perk. Yeah, let it perk. But you are not involved in that process. You know, you can welcome it, you can allow it, there's plenty of space for it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to try to figure that out either, because
Yeah, I think I'm further out of the head than I realize. And I'm just kind of working, trying to get it to not stop perking. That's what I
you
don't
don't,
want it to
you
keep
don't need to
pushing.
get it to stop perking. Right. Just let
On a
it do
humorous note, it came through this morning that it was like my Wile E. Coyote caught the Roadrunner. Like, now what do I do?
Now you caught the roadrunner, now what you do?
Yeah, that's kind of.
You
I
sit,
think
you sit together and enjoy the desert. Yeah.
things are going well. It's just.
Yeah. Don't you think Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner are really good friends at heart?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, so they can just sit and have a cup of tea.
Okay.
They've been dancing together for so long.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. Yeah. For those of you who did not grow up in the United States, this is a cartoon. It's actually probably been seen all around the world, but a cartoon where a coyote chases a roadrunner, which is a bird. It's constantly eluding it. So anyway, very good. Someone else. Patrick, yes. Uh-huh. You unmute yourself? I'll unmute you. You're unmuted. There you are.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I have a question about something I'm not that familiar with. You mentioned it once before. You called it Sheila, I think the word is.
When did I mention that?
I was on another satsang
A different
webinar thing.
satsang.
Yeah, not this one. But I'm curious as relates to my understanding of what Sheila is that it's relates to ethics and morals. Is that correct?
Yeah, the three basic, I don't know what the word is, but of Dharma are dhyana, shila, and panya, which is meditation. Well, I think it actually goes shila, dhyana, panya, which is ethics, meditation, and wisdom. Those are the three aspects of the traditional Theravada path, traditional Buddhist path. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the understanding was to, I actually interviewed Goenka once about this. I had the opportunity to interview the great meditation master, S.N. Goenka, when I was at Yoga Journal. And he said, you know, that Shila is what makes the other two possible, because if you don't act with integrity, then you can't sit in meditation because your mind is too agitated. And I thought that was very interesting, you know, that a certain amount of integrity is necessary to even be on the path of awakening, to meditate, and then to wake up, prajna, to wake up.
Okay. Well, maybe my question isn't so coherent, but I was just wondering what the relationship is with not knowing and having a set of standards or ethics or morals. You know, obviously,
Right.
not knowing does Sheila, I guess my question might be, does Sheila arise from a place of not knowing? I mean, obviously we act.
That's a beautiful
Obviously we act when called upon, when we feel moved to do something, to participate, to act. And that's my understanding of Sheila, that integrity would come from some place of not knowing. It's not coming from a mental concept or an idea or a belief. It would spring forth from something deeper. And that's my question. Is that accurate?
That's a great question, Patrick. And I agree with you that true Sheila comes from this deeper knowing / not knowing, you know, the deeper knowing. And really, the word that I like is integrity, you know? Integrity comes from integer, right? Meaning one. And it also means to live in alignment, right? And integrity means in alignment with the truth of your being. So the more deeply you understand and realize the truth of your being, the more naturally you will act in integrity, in alignment. And of course, we've seen teachers and others who don't necessarily do this. You know, I've seen them when I was a Zen monk, and you know, and so we see this throughout. It doesn't automatically happen. But if there's some, how shall I say, dedication to living an awakened life and living in alignment with what we realize, then I think you're correct that integrity or ethical behavior arises naturally. And in fact, when I was a Zen student way back, my first Zen teacher, we studied the ethics, the precepts of Zen. And the deepest understanding of the precepts is that it's a description of enlightened behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, description, not prescription, that kind of thing.
Right. That's right. That's the deepest understanding. So there are different levels of understanding the precepts, but the deepest one is this is what an enlightened person does. You know. Mm-hmm. So if you come from that place, then ethics naturally arises, right? Right action naturally arises. You don't have to prescribe it or impose some agenda or idea. It naturally occurs, as does love, as does compassion, as do all these other qualities that arise from the recognition of our true nature. Right. So yeah, it's a great question, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. And so then it's up to each of us to realize who we really are, you know, and then to actualize that, right? It's one thing to realize it, another thing to actualize or embody it. That's the whole point, right?
Right, and along those lines, you mentioned we've seen teachers who, you know, have somehow forgotten that, and that's pretty interesting. And to me, it just kind of points to the thing that you're only awake in this moment. I don't care what kind of realization you think you had 10 minutes ago or 5 years ago or whatever. Anybody can fall asleep in any moment and have blind spots, have shadow stuff pop up. I mean, to me, you're only awake right now.
I think that's great, Patrick. I remember a conversation I was having a long time ago with Aja, you know, and you know, he said there is no enlightenment. He said there are only enlightened moments. Now, he doesn't say that in his talks necessarily, but when I thought, yeah, you know, that's right. There are only enlightened moments, right? And I think that's absolutely right. There are only enlightened moments. Some moments are not so enlightened.
Right. Yes. As long as one Aja story, as long as sharing Aja stories, I remember hearing him say that he sat down with one of his office staff to look at what kind of products people were buying, CDs, topics, and the least popular, the most, you know, less bought product was the one on morals and ethics.
Right.
The ones about enlightenment and you're already there, you're already enlightened, those were the top sellers. But the ones about moral and ethics, actually living it, living your truth,
That's
not
right.
as much interest.
That's right. Yeah. You know, actually, there's also this wonderful story that I just heard that I'll share. It's kind of apropos, but it's such a wonderful story. It was on a podcast. I don't know how many of you know Sam Harris, who's written a book on, you know, he has an app on meditation. He's also a neuroscientist, but he's also written about meditation. He teaches kind of Mahamudra Buddhist approach. And he was talking with, I forget who it was, some expert on something. And they were talking about a woman who had been with Punjaji, who, you know, the great master, student of Ramana Maharshi. And Punjaji was known for basically telling everyone who professed that they had an awakening experience that, yes, you're enlightened, you know, giving his approval of everyone, which is where, you know, a lot of the teachers came in the late 90s from Punjaji saying, yes, go forth and teach, right? So this one woman said she declared herself enlightened, and she was in this kind of blissful state for days and days and days. And so some people were going up to visit with the great Dzogchen master Tulku Urgyen, who was in Nepal. And she said, okay, I'll tag along. So they went up there. A group of them went up to Tulku Urgyen, and he used to see people in his little house, you know, up there near the monastery. And some people went in, you know, he asked her about her experience. She said, yeah, you know, she said, I'm just in total bliss. She said, I haven't had a thought for weeks. He said, oh, is that so? She said, yeah, I haven't had a thought in weeks. He said, okay, well, we have a lot of time. He said, let's all sit together and you let us know when you have a thought. He said, and we have plenty of time, you know, well, we can spend, you know, a long time here. So please let us know the next time you have a thought. So, you know, after 5 minutes went by, she said, well, I have to admit, you know, I just had a thought. And that was the end of her enlightenment experience, right? So, you know, the claims of enlightenment can be sort of questionable, right? They're only enlightened moments, right? So thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, awakening, it doesn't have anything to do with not having any thoughts, but I thought it was a wonderful story. Yes, Kathy.
Good morning, Stephen. So talking about integrity and our behavior. So if I'm living in integrity, but that is also influenced by this individual, correct? By this body mind, by my conditioning, by my background, by my history, by all those things come into play into this human being right now. And I understand that we can be in touch with living from a place of integrity or a place of openness or spaciousness. So let me make it more specific.
Well, let me just say one thing is that
okay, thank you.
Integrity, it's not an absolute. There's no perfect integrity.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You know, there's more or less of an integrity, more or less of being in alignment, right? So in other words, we want to keep listening deeply, connecting with our deepest truth, and then allowing as much as we can our life to flow from there, right? That's what living in integrity means, as much as we can. Yeah.
And isn't that always going to be
influenced by this.
Thank you.
Well, of
Thank
course, because
Yes.
it's coming through this particular
Yes.
body mind, right?
Correct. Yes. So there's no ultimate
No.
integrity. Yes. It's going to always be influence and it's going to
Individual.
be
It's individual.
okay. That was a question because we all have preferences, chocolate, vanilla, whatever.
Yeah. There's no
Yeah.
absolute integrity. Integrity is a very individual thing. Each one of us aligns with the truth of our being and acts in very different ways from the way someone else might act, right?
Right. So going back to the point of not being, I act in certain ways, but not being tied into certain opinions. We started with once you set yourself up with an opinion, you become separate. But there are certain ways that this being right here acts because of whatever. I choose to wear a mask because I don't want to infect other people.
Yeah.
I don't want to be infected. I don't. And there's other people that are going, oh, that's just a big conspiracy.
Well, and the best information you have tells you that it's probably a good idea to wear a mask. And we do our best under the circumstances. We use the information at our disposal, but we don't become fixated in a point of view, a rigid, point of view, to the exclusion of all kinds of other possibilities and information. This is the point, right?
Okay.
We use the information at our disposal, that which seems believable, and what seems believable to you will seem different to someone else, right?
True, yes. And so I choose not to fight that, but I choose to make those decisions for myself.
Absolutely.
And in terms of like looking at like global warming and the environmental problems and stuff like that, there are certain things that ring true here, and that I believe that again, that's a belief, but there's certain things I think that pollution and those kinds of things should be looked at in order to save the planet.
There are certain things that are facts, right?
Right.
I mean, unless we throw out science, I mean, certain things are facts, and certain things, like with the virus, there are different ways. Where did it come from? There are different points of view. How does it affect the body? There are different points of view. We don't know for sure yet. Some things are facts. How much pollution there is, that seems to be a fact. How much the ocean is warming seems to be a fact. As much as, and so we respond to the facts, but we don't come up with rigid, necessarily, theories. I mean, theorizing, of course, to a certain degree is essential. We're always coming up with theories.
Thank you. That's
how we hold them, right? That's the issue. We hold them lightly, hypothetically, this may be the case, and I'm going to act this way because this is what seems to be the case, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, that's where I play. I understand that, and I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, that seems, that rings true, and it's not being in a position.
It's about attachment, rigidity, fixation,
right.
As opposed to openness, fluidity, flow.
And it's not the other end of that spectrum of whatever, it's all, doesn't matter. It's all gonna, everything's.
That's a point of view,
Yeah. And it's all going to happen as it happens. I mean, there's two places you can go to: the strength of the attachment, or you can go to the, oh well, it's all happening, it doesn't matter. I see those as 2 points, but you've got to flow into the middle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, or I don't even know if there's a middle. You just flow where you're moved to go on the information that you have.
Okay.
We each have our different perspectives, but again, just to hold them lightly, not be attached to our point of view, to be open, essentially. Because reality is far more complex and mysterious than we can possibly understand. I think that's the key.
I agree.
Possibilities are always much greater than
Right.
we expect, you know.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Because as soon as we reify a point of view, we and take a position, then we fall out of again out of the openness, and we localize who we think we are. You know, we become this point of view. You know, we are located here, as opposed to being our true nature, which is boundless and openness, and you see, and not localized. You see. I mean, it's living through this body mind. We take whatever measures we need to. We formulate whatever, you know, best guess scenarios we can in each situation. But then we come to rest in openness. You see, that's the ultimate resting place. That's where all the theories resolve and dissolve. They dissolve into openness, and then we're called back into responding to the next situation, and we respond as we do, and then you know, we come to rest in and come from the openness. Does that make sense? Yeah. And you can feel it, right? You can feel it when you get fixated. You can feel the rigidifying, the tensing up, the holding, right? You start polarizing. You see, it's a whole way of being that gets triggered. And so to be really attuned to those clues, you know, that we're losing our way, as I put it last time. Because the idea of the way in Zen, which is a translation of Tao, right? Translation of the way is, you know, an important understanding in Zen. You lose your way, you know, you lose your path or alignment. Someone else.
Hey, Stephen.
Yes, Louise, hi there.
Hello. I am sitting with a lot of things have been kind of rolling through, and I'm sitting with kind of like an irritation. I've had one more interaction with that woman that I met, the woman who just got out of the 3-year Lama retreat. And my one last interaction with her really stirred up some stuff for me, I guess, that I'm kind of chewing on. And it's like kind of looking at, you know, like culture, you know, how culture can affect a person's nervous system, you know, like how, because she's Chinese and like from China. And
Right.
I'm looking at like, you know, how, like what is kind of like accepted as normal, you know, in Chinese culture, and how much of it is like linked to trauma and the way people communicate with each other, you know, with or without really seeing each other, you know. So like when I hang out with her, like she'll say things like, I'll be like, oh, I finished eating, you know, let's meet down by the hall so we can go for a walk. And she's like, well, I already finished eating. You know, it's kind of like that. It's like little things, you know. And then later I'm in the garden. I'm like, oh, I've never been in the garden before. And she'll be like, well, I came in here already the other day. And it's it's like I'm kind of like seeing these energies, and I think it's stirring up a lot of stuff for me, because there's this whole like I think the identity that's like kind of brought up is like the inept one, you know. I've realized I grew up in a family that was very quick to do that to me, and I think I imagine for her as well, you know,
Made to feel inept.
made to feel inept. And I feel like that we're responding in different ways. You know, the way that she's responding is kind of a fight response. It's like, well, I can't, but I can, you know. And I think sometimes that gets stirred up in me, even though I don't necessarily act it out. And then like we also had this one moment where I said, you know, she was talking about how like 15 people got into the 3-year retreat and only 2 people came out. And she's kind of like really proud of that, I think. And I said, and I said,
when 3 years in 3 years in retreat, and what she came out with was pride.
I think that's the case, because I told her like,
it's just interesting, right? That, you know,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I told her I was like, you know, yeah, I'm like working through a lot of emotional energies. I need to be by myself, and it's really healing. And she just kind of looked at me like I was crazy, you know, like that I need to be by myself. And she's like, yeah, well, you can never do a 3-year retreat. And I was just, at the time I was kind of like, you know, in shock. I just didn't know how to respond. Like, wow, just like the harshness that's there. I feel like there's like a lot of unprocessed personal stuff that's like bubbling under the surface, and it's driving her. And
right, but again, as I often ask you, so what does that have to do with you?
I think it's something just, I think it's definitely like my own trauma stuff, you know, like being sort of led around as a little kid by someone who was like that, very violent and very judgmental, and not being seen, and feeling like the kind of like the sensations I'm working with is like this like powerlessness, like struggle in my hip. I think we've talked about this before, the powerlessness struggle spectrum. And like, even though I could see, like I can like, you know, from like the waist up, I can be like, wow, you know, it is really her stuff. And I feel a lot of compassion for her, and I've advised her like get help. And you know, now I'm keeping my distance, and I'm doing my own retreat, but like below the waist, I feel it, you know, I feel it's like in my tailbone, it's like up the side of my hip. It's
so it's stirring up some old beliefs, patterns. But again, I think what's so interesting about the story you're telling, it's not what you're focusing on particularly, but you know, in terms of for all of us, is how you can spend 3 years on a traditional retreat and come more rigid than when you went in. You see?
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know what kind of guidance she had or what she was doing on the retreat, but you know, the whole orientation of practice in order to achieve something, you know, it can put us into that kind of a place, you know. Well, gee, I've achieved something. I've gotten someplace. Now I'm really a seasoned practitioner. You know,
yeah, she told me like, I don't ever get angry anymore. I really don't ever get angry anymore. She's like, look, she just kept saying that to me.
Like I was talking about is that I don't have any thoughts. You know, get her together. I mean, took her. You know, is one of the great Dzogchen masters of the 20th century. You know, I thought that was a great interaction. You know, it's like, we'll wait for you to have a thought. I mean, I thought that was just brilliant. Okay, well, gee, I just had a thought, right? So, you know. So all she needs is someone like that to interact with, but she doesn't have someone like that to interact with. So she could be stuck there for years, the rest of her life. See? Which is sad, really, you know.
I think I feel that too. It's like, you know, then she's going to be another person around in the world, like so many other people I know, who just take their sort of like achievement. Like I've done it. I'm it. I've got it. And then there's all the personal stuff below that's not processed. And then it's just this time it has a spiritual facade. It's the same thing. It makes me really sad.
It's sad. Yeah. And that's why we're here today and talking about what we're talking about, right? Because you could do 3 years of that and still never get this very fundamental point. Not knowing is the most intimate, right? Seeing that, you know, you can cut through a whole lot of stuff just And that's why, traditionally they would do koan study. I don't think koan study has been used so skillfully in Zen for, for many centuries, but as far as I can tell. But that's the potential of koan study. You work with a koan like that, you really see it deeply. It can cut through a lot of structures, shall we say.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just sitting with like kind of a bad taste, bad
Yeah.
taste.
Yeah. Well, she's a teacher. Again, you're on a solitary retreat, but it's not completely solitary. So everyone you meet is your teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks, Louise. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we've come to the end, so let's sit quietly together for a few minutes. Enjoy the silence once again. Thank you, all of you who shared. Thank you. See, when we live from the not knowing, we have an opportunity to really appreciate the richness and the mystery of life, which is what it's all about. It's deeply, deeply fulfilling for us, as well as allowing us to live from deepest knowing. So thank you, everyone. It's been lovely to be together, and look forward to seeing you all again at some point. Namaste. Namaste.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely to see you all.